The 2016 World Cup of Hockey was one of the best ideas by the NHL in recent history. A tournament of the league's best players split up into 6 teams playing for their country. It brought together some of the greatest players who would have otherwise never been on the ice on the same team. It's hard to believe, but that was 8 years ago. And since then, we haven't seen a best-on-best international tournament. So with the 4 nations face-off coming up this February, I think it's a great time to look back at the greatness that was the 2016 World Cup of Hockey.
Gets himself loose, Matthews in front, he scores!
Over the entire history of the NHL, there have been plenty of international tournaments featuring NHL players, dating as far back as 1972. Now, in 1972, 95% of the National League was Canadian, with the other 5% being mainly American with 1 Swede and 1 Dane. So having an international tournament at this time would make no sense. There just wasn't enough even spread talent throughout the world. But halfway across the world, the Soviet Union had a pretty good hockey team. With all the good Canadian players playing in the NHL, the Soviets were dominating international play, which professionals couldn't compete in. So with the idea to give these 2 dominant forces a place to play each other, the Summit Series was born. The Summit Series was an 8-game series between the Soviets and the Canadian national team. The first game was played on September 2nd, 1972 at the Forum in Montreal, and the Soviets won 7-3. The series evened up after that, with Canada winning 4-1. They then tied 4-4 before the Soviets took 2 games in a row. Then Canada won the next 3 games to win the first ever Summit Series. Phil Esposito led the tournament in points with 13 points in 8 games, with his brother leading the goaltending stats. But the 1974 Summit Series did not go as well for Canada, as the Soviets won the series with 4 wins, 1 loss, and 3 ties. Next was the Super Series, which were exhibition games between the best Soviet teams from the Soviet Hockey League, with an exception in 1983 when the Soviet national team actually played, and they would play various NHL teams each year. From 1976 to 1991, the Soviets won 14 out of 18 series, with the NHL just winning twice and tying twice. 98 games were played across the 18 series, and the Soviets posted a record of 55, 33, and 10. During this time, the Canada Cup was also taking place. There were 5 tournaments played from 1976 to 1991, with Canada winning 4 times and the Soviets winning once. Now, this wasn't just Team Canada and the Soviets going at it like it seems. Other teams were also in the mix. Nations like Czechoslovakia, Sweden, and the United States all made an appearance in one of the final rounds. The Canada Cup was awesome. It showcased the best players in the world, made for some entertaining hockey, and granted us with this iconic moment of the 2 greatest players of all time linking up for the game-winning goal in 1987. From then, the Challenge Cup in 1979 and the Rendezvous in 87 saw the NHL All-Stars play the Soviet Union, totaling 3 games. Then in 1996, the World Cup of Hockey replaced the Canada Cup. Although being around for almost 30 years, the tournament has only been played 3 times, with the last being in 2016. And the 2016 tournament was amazing. And it was amazing because it was different. Change isn't something that the NHL or hockey fans in general welcome too much, but this tournament challenged those beliefs. And that was with the introduction of 2 new teams that the hockey world has never seen play on an international stage: Team Europe and Team North America. First, Team Europe. In order to keep the tournament to a smaller number of teams and more competitive, all of Europe, except for Finland and Sweden, were combined into 1 team. Now, some may look at this and think that it takes away from players who wanted to represent their own country, but in my eyes, it gave players like Anze Kopitar a chance who would have otherwise never had a shot at winning on the international stage playing for Slovenia. Also, those countries have next to no NHL players and wouldn't even fill a team up. So it was either you have players like Draisaitl, Kopitar, Josi, Chara not participating, or you throw them all on 1 team and have them play together, which is ultimately what they did, leading to the creation of Team Europe. The second new addition to the international stage was Team North America. Coming in with the average age of 22, Team North America was composed of players 23 and under from either Canada or the United States. And in my opinion, this is one of the best things the NHL has ever done. You could have had these young guys either not play in the tourney or play for their home country, which would remove a few guys from the roster, but instead the NHL put all these young stars on 1 team, allowing for more players to play in the tournament and creating a new and exciting team in the process. Today, this roster would be a super team. It had the likes of Connor McDavid, Nathan MacKinnon, Austin Matthews, Jack Eichel, Dylan Larkin, and the list goes on and on of superstars. But before these guys became superstars, they were on this team. McDavid and Eichel had just one season under their belt, Matthews hadn't even played an NHL game, and Matt Murray was still considered the future of goaltending. Outside those new teams, you had your standard international teams: Canada, USA, Sweden, Finland, Russia, and the Czech Republic. So the stage was set, 176 of the best players from around the world playing for their respective teams, and the puck was ready to drop. The tournament was held in traditional international fashion. 2 groups, then after group play it goes to the medal round. Group A consisted of Canada, Europe, Czech Republic, and the States, while Group B had Sweden, Russia, North America, and Finland. And honestly, the group stage was probably the best time during the tournament, even better than the medal rounds. For one, we saw Canada absolutely dominate, going 3-0, scoring 14 goals while just allowing 3. They finished at the top of Group A, advancing to the knockout stage along with Europe. USA surprisingly lost all 3 games, finishing last in that group. Well, maybe it wasn't all too surprising. Team USA was led by John Tortorella and an old-school management style. They went all in on toughness, building a roster full of grinders, agitators, and power forwards. The idea was to physically dominate the other teams with guys like Jack Johnson, Dustin Byfuglien, Eric Johnson, Kyle Palmieri, David Backes, Ryan Kessler, and Justin Abdelkader. And on paper, they looked tough to play against, but the reality on ice had fans shaking their heads. Like I said, Team USA lost all 3 group stage games, ending with a -6 goal differential and finishing 7th just above last place Finland. With USA not recording a single win, Group A was a lot less competitive than expected. But Group B, on the other hand, was filled with tight games and an even tighter standings. Sweden and Russia advanced to the knockout stage, with the young Team North America missing because of a head-to-head tiebreaker. Both them and Russia had 4 points, but because Russia beat NA, they would move on. Which sucked because that North American team was so much fun to watch. Arguably 2 of the best moments from the tournament came from that team. Now, I know it's not quite Gretzky to Lemieux, but seeing McDavid blaze down the ice, fight off a defender, then feed Matthews backdoor is unreal. This is probably the only time Matthews and McDavid will ever play on the same team in a competitive environment, and that's probably a good thing because of how scary it is. And you can't really think about the World Cup of Hockey without thinking about the game between Sweden and North America. September 21st, it was the last game of the group stage for North America, and they needed to win in order to put the pressure on Russia. And this game was entertaining from the jump. The first play of the game, McDavid flies down the ice, gets a shot on net while falling. Matthews then gathers the rebound while he's falling. Deke's seasoned veteran Victor Hedman, while he's on his knees, feeds his teammate Morgan Riley for a one-timer. Then Matthews again gets to the rebound, this time punting it in. This play just embodies Team North America, young, fast, creative, and fun to watch. And if the game didn't get off to a hot enough start, just 20 seconds after the goal, Seth Jones finds Johnny Gaudreau, who's in for a breakaway, but's hooked on the play, resulting in a penalty shot. He missed the net, but his team had his back as just 30 seconds after the penalty shot, Trocheck puts in a slap pass from Gostisbehere, making it 2-0 NA. Sweden then answers with a quick shot from Forsberg, but 5 minutes later, Gaudreau gets his revenge from the penalty shot and absolutely undresses Hank, making it 3-1. Then just about 2 minutes after that, Backstrom would put in this rebound, making it a 1-goal game. Mind you, this all happened in the first period. The game then went quiet for a little bit until Berglund tipped in a shot, making it a tie game in the 3rd period, and we're going to overtime. In my opinion, this is the best 3-on-3 overtime game ever played. And that's because this was a time before players skated out of the zone and regrouped or waited for a change, so this was just straight full throttle offense for an entire period. Both teams traded elite chances, but with under a minute remaining in the game, this happened.
Lundqvist fought that off, and here they come again. At center, Henrik Sedin was all alone. McKinnon's all alone. He shoots, he scores!
If you want to watch the full overtime, you can find it on YouTube. I highly recommend it as it's probably the best game of the tournament. But despite the unreal effort from NA winning that game, Russia would end up just winning their last game against Finland, putting them into the knockout stage, where they would then play the red-hot Team Canada. Canada won against Russia 5-3 and would move on to face Europe in the final as they beat Sweden in overtime. The final was unlike a lot of international tournaments, where it's just a one-off game. The World Cup was a 3-game final, and I mean there's really no suspense here. Canada won 2 games out of the 3, winning the World Cup. They were just so good, man. The Crosby, Marchand, Bergeron line dominated other teams. And when you have that in combination with a prime Carey Price, I really don't think any team could come close to beating them. Crosby took home the MVP as he led the tournament in points, and that was a wrap on the 2016 World Cup of Hockey, the last time we've seen actual best-on-best international play. And it probably won't be for a while until we see another actual best-on-best tournament. Sure, the Four Nations coming up is going to be a lot of fun. We can potentially see McDavid, Crosby, and McKinnon on a line together. Maybe Bedard makes the team, but we'll still be missing Russia due to the conflicts they're having with Ukraine. Now, I don't want to get into politics, but this really sucks. Russia has some of the best players in the league, and it doesn't feel right having an international tournament without them. We're missing out on watching Kucherov, Ovechkin, Panarin, Kaprizov, Shesterkin, potentially Michkov, and it really does suck that the conflict with Ukraine affects the NHL so much that these players can't represent their country in a tournament that they would be highly competitive in. And on top of that, the Four Nations is exactly that. It's just four nations: USA, Canada, Sweden, and Finland. And to be fair, outside those countries and Russia, there are very little superstars, let alone NHL players. So it would be difficult to fill these teams with NHL players, but that's exactly the reason why Team Europe was introduced. We're still being robbed of seeing players like Pasternak and Draisaitl play at the international stage. The World Cup came with exciting teams, a new format, and line combinations that hockey fans could only dream of seeing. Imagine a Team North America today, watching Bedard, Cooley, Hughes, and Lafreniere playing together. But sadly, I don't think we'll see anything like that again, at least in the near future. When it comes to the NHL putting together an international tournament, it seems very inconsistent. And with the Four Nations, it seems like they're going in the direction of having smaller tournaments. So all we can really do now is rewatch and reminisce on the greatness that was the 2016 World Cup of Hockey.